God's grace is for all. I see the salvation of God in my students especially. Hi everyone, Angelo here. I'm a creative and theologian, and it's the feast of the presentation. So we're in chapter 2 of Luke, and in this story here, we have Jesus' parents taking him to the temple to be presented, because according to the law, every firstborn male had to be consecrated to God. Besides that, it was also a purification ritual as well, especially for Mary after having given birth and all the blood loss and everything. On top of it, also for them to give a sacrifice. Now, in the temple, while the Holy Family is there were also two particular people that the story focuses on, and that is Simeon and that is Anna. Both people with the Holy Spirit is with them, and both prophesying. Even Simeon here, for example, prophesying and saying things like, well, besides in praise of God, saying that his eyes seen the salvation which God would have prepared for the nations to see, he also said things like, this child is a sign that will be a fall and rise for the many of Israel. And saying to Mary as well, and well, presumably Joseph too, that a sword would pierce her soul, meaning Mary, but well, again, presumably for both of them. And then Anna too, upon encountering the child, praising God. And then this way the story ends off is by saying that after they did everything according to the law, then they went to Galilee and Nazareth in particular, and Jesus grew up and God's favor was with him. And then we know later on in this same chapter itself what goes on with Jesus back in the temple a few years later. But anyways, we are taking it back a bit today, because recently we were dealing with Jesus when he was an adult, and now we're taking it back to when he was a baby. Because of course today is the Feast of the Presentation. And I mean, fun fact, depending on who you ask, some people might say that this feast is when Christmas is officially over. I mean, I don't know, in Trinidad it feel like Christmas over December 26th, but that's a different story. So we're here in Luke, and Luke is like the gospel of equity in a way. Because he often has, in many of these stories, the way the stories are constructed, it comes from both a male side and a female side, or it involves a man and it involves a woman. And I mean, one of the leading theories as to why is because Luke wanted to show the universality of Christianity. He wanted to show the universality of the church, that God's grace isn't for some, but rather that God's grace is for all, men, women, all people. So that's why we have Simeon and Anna here today. I look at this and I see it as a marrying of our masculine and our feminine energy. Or, as I would have learned in spiritual direction, the animo and the anima. Another way that I see this story is that it's a marrying of our human nature and our divine potential as well. Meaning that Simeon and Anna being the humans, and then the Holy Family, Jesus in particular, representing that divinity, and of course Jesus being fully human, fully God, all coming together in this one moment. I feel like it goes to show that when we integrate our whole selves into our experience, into this life that we do have, we come personally to see the salvation of God in the flesh. And I think there's so many different ways to experience that seeing of salvation. So two things that jump out at me in the story here is, well, one is the idea of gratitude and the other is the idea of serendipity. And all of this is underlined by the presence of the Holy Spirit. Now, whether or not this story is historically accurate, I mean, who could say? At the same time, I'm not sure that it necessarily needs to be, because it still shows us truth anyway. And the story shows us the fact that the Spirit is all around us. The Spirit is everywhere, especially inside of here. And it seems like whether or not we are aware of it can make all the difference in our lives, in our day-to-day experience. So it's like in this story here, it looks like both Simeon and Anna are experiencing serendipity, like they're going through a serendipitous moment. It definitely shows too in the story that they're both grateful as well. It seems like they're both experiencing major gratitude as well because of this little child, and by extension, their family. And it just makes me wonder if there's a direct relationship between the two, gratitude and serendipity. And I mean, as in, even if through our prayer lives and opening ourselves up to God's presence, opening ourselves up to the Holy Spirit in our lives, we can experience serendipity and gratitude more than we might currently be. Now, of course, gratitude is more than an emotion, right? Gratitude is also a practice. And we can practice gratitude every day. And I feel like living a life of gratitude could open our eyes to notice the Holy Spirit more and to notice the serendipity in our lives more too. And then, of course, all these experiences will also fuel our gratitude in return, right? So it's a very like cyclical relationship. An experience like this, like gratitude, serendipity, and even sometimes just simple prayer, that could help lead us to experience what Simeon and Anna would have experienced in this story. Because Simeon and Anna, they saw the salvation of God all in this little infant. So I invite you to take a look at your life and to identify where you might find the salvation of God. For me, I see the salvation of God in our young people. I see the salvation of God in my students especially. I'm sure many parents see the salvation of God in their children. I'm sure many clergy and religious people see the salvation of God in the people that they serve. My hope is that in Trinidad and Tobago, we could look at our youth the way Simeon and Anna looked at Jesus. We need to show our youth that there are role models that they can look up to. It doesn't always have to be celebrity or gang life. We could show them what's real and we could show them what's authentic. Like, I look at my girls and so many of them are taken up with, well, what we'll call here the Trinidad lifestyle. And I mean, I get it. I mean, I used to be like that too in a way. But then the question I have to ask is, why? Why are our youth so taken up with this in the first place? And I'm not referring to the youth who end up in gangs forced against their own will, because there are a lot of them who do get forced into it. And I mean, that's a violation of their own human dignity in and of itself. Like, they don't choose that. A lot of times they get extorted into it or threatened into it different ways. But long story short, they get forced into it. So I'm not referring to them. But for our young people who idolize a life of, well, outside of what God has in store for them, why? And I mean, for sure, what young person wouldn't want to feel a sense of importance? And more importantly, what young person wouldn't want to feel a sense of belonging? But my thing is, why are they longing for this? What are we doing? And I know there are a lot of people doing a lot, so I don't mean to make it seem like binary and either or, because there are a lot of people who are doing a lot of good work. And that work is commendable to the highest levels. Really, I just wonder, well, at least what I could do differently. What is it that can be done to change the system? What is it that can be done to change society's self-view? Because a lot of it starts with ourselves. A lot of it starts with us as the individuals. So it just makes me wonder, what can we do? What can I do? But when it comes to our young people, we need for them to at least have the opportunity for them to be able to look up to people like their teachers, to look up to people like their politicians, look up to people like their slightly older peers even, who might be working in malls or working in small shops, who now starting to get into work life. We could offer our youth belonging and meaning through things like good opportunities and scholarships, fair wages, fair housing prices, and just an overall bringing about of justice in society. But the other side of it is, how do we even offer something we don't have ourselves, right? I don't know. I just believe that we could have these things if we organize properly. Because Jesus here in this story, as much as he's a baby, he shows us that there's a different way of life. And then, of course, throughout this space of his life in the gospel, and then especially after, right? And Anna and Simeon show us that too, that there's a different way of life. And Mary and Joseph show us that too, that there's a different way of life. And yeah, there are different paths in life. And with the Spirit's guidance, we can experience this overall happiness. Like, it's a type of happiness that we would have never even knew while making a difference in society. So, for example, if you get to go abroad, so those of us who are privileged enough to go abroad, when we go abroad, let's come back home after and let's show the young people how it's done. Let's bring back the wealth of experience that we gain from abroad. I mean, let's bring it back and share with the same community that would have supported us to get us out there in the first place. And I mean, it's not that there's anything wrong with staying abroad, right? Obviously, there's nothing wrong with that. Like, societal change, it requires major sacrifice. And everybody has their part to play. Everybody could contribute, whether or not you are in the Caribbean or outside of it, abroad. All of us have a part to play. But I will say that being on the ground helps. It helps us to see it. It helps us to see the salvation. Being on the ground helps us to realize that there's definitely more good than bad overall. Being on the ground helps us to be grateful too. Being on the ground helps us to experience serendipity. And to be honest, being on the ground helps us to let the Holy Spirit rest on us. The Holy Spirit is active in our day-to-day lives. And I think that's something we could take for granted. Let's just not take God's love and God's grace for granted. Because when it comes to our life in the Spirit, I'm just not sure that there's anything more meaningful than that. So let's bring that about for the good of our society. Let's bring that about for the good of our young people especially. Because when one of us wins, we all win. Anyways, that's it from me this week. And as always, I appreciate you so much for watching. Thank you.